I want everybody to say, talk to me then, what? 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 Lady, talk to me then, what? Talk to me then, what?
Welcome to the 24th episode of Ntenjwa Talks. I never thought that it would be... Actually, let me put it like this. I thought this was going to be more difficult than it's supposed to be. But I see why there's a lot of podcasts, because there's a lot of things to talk about. Unfortunately, some people are not, they just have views, but they don't sound interesting or entertaining as well. I find it kind of weird that there's always an audience for something, right? And then for some reason, if you pay attention to what's being talked about and you pay attention to like the whole setting and everything about that said thing, you realize that there kind of is some truth to the purpose of supporting one thing, because the person who's supporting it is directly or indirectly funding it. Although that's not my topic today, it was just something that I'm just thinking of right now before I get into today's topic. But it's kind of strange that there's an audience for everything and there's an audience for every topic. Some of the audience, some of the topics don't even favor the community guidelines of some apps. I'm not going to mention names, but they don't favor the community guidelines of some apps. But because they are funded, why should you disappoint the person who's funding? Anyway, so I wanted to talk about this thing of people not being able to argue their point very well. I don't think this is going to be a long episode because, unless if I just think of other questions to ask myself and then answer them again. It's something that I've learned to do, because sometimes when you argue or debate with someone, they can't argue their point. You get what I'm saying? So there's this thing where there's certain people, not even certain people, like majority of the people, when you argue with them, you end up talking about, or they end up bringing something completely different to the point of the argument or debate, right? And that kind of pisses me off, because first of all, now you're just wasting my time and my energy, because I'm interested in talking to you about this. But now, because you're losing this argument or debate, now you want to bring something that obviously is going to make you end up speaking alone, to make you think that you actually won the debate or argument. So I don't like that, honestly. I don't. Like, if we're going to talk about something, if you want to reference something else, at least reference something that's relevant. Don't reference something that's not relevant. or that's going to end up leading to something else completely different to what we're talking about. And it's kind of strange that in a different setting, like there's a setting where you would do that and it favors you. In most cases, depending on the audience, like you can find yourself in an argument or a debate where the audience favors the person you're debating with or you're arguing with, and whatever he or she says just so happens to get the support of the audience, and then you lose that argument or debate. But no, you don't. And the reason why I'm saying this is because of the recent, uh, you know, the recent news or trend, right? What's trend? Okay, trending news. Let me put it like that. Of certain artists going on live stream and shitting on each other. That whole thing. I don't know. I'm not gonna mention names, but you know what I'm talking about. And the thing is, even if you want to argue or talk about something or share your frustration on someone, stick to that thing. Like, don't mention other things just to get your point across, because at the end of the day, the frustration you're going to understand it. But now, if you're going to add a lot of things that are totally different, although maybe that person that you're shitting on maybe is guilty of, maybe, but what if he or she is not also guilty of that? But my point is, now you're bringing all of those things which you can't even prove yourself. They're just allegations or they're just suspicions. Now we're no longer listening to the frustration, or we're no longer going to consider your frustration as a valid frustration. Like, we're not going to consider your crash out as a valid crash out, because now you are just crashing out. You're no longer sharing your frustration. You are just crashing out now. So it really doesn't make sense to me how you can just have a valid thing to be frustrated about, share it, and then end up just crashing out. Why? Okay, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? Now that you've mentioned every single thing you can mention, just to make sure that your crash out is valid. Now you've said it, so what must we do now? Should we still consider your frustration as a valid, that thing that you're frustrated about? Should we still pay attention to that, or should we pay attention to the other things that are now turning your frustration into a crash out? So it really doesn't make sense to me, like how you would just think to yourself, okay, I'm pissed off about this, but you know what's gonna make this have much more of an impact is if I mention things that are gonna make him or her, their dignity is gonna have there's gonna be a negative impact on their dignity. So what do you want us to do? You want us to support in making sure that that happens, or you want us to listen and support you in what you were actually frustrated about? Like, it doesn't make sense. If I have a complaint, say maybe on an app, right? And I have valid things to talk about, but because there are certain things that have been mentioned that once you say them, you're gonna immediately get a reaction from a certain type of audience, or from certain people, or from that app, or from the app developers themselves, or the owner of the app. Now, how are they going to consider my feedback relevant because now that means I'm not actually frustrated on that thing that actually frustrated me. Now I'm just trying to hop on what's gonna ensure that this app is now considered a bad app just because I said the trigger words. Like, I hope I'm making sense, because I would like to think that if someone is shitting on me, at least tell me what problem you have with me. But don't mention trigger words, because I'm not gonna take you seriously. Like, once I hear you using the trigger words, I'm immediately like, oh, he or she is one of those. So I really don't understand why you would think it is best for you to just share your frustration, which is valid. Everyone can share the frustration. But then end up drifting towards using the trigger words just to get your point across. Which means the initial thing that led you to sharing the frustration means it's not enough to get your point across. So is it really valid then? See you next episode.
I want everybody to say, talk to me then, what? Talk to me then, what? Say to me then, what? Talk to me